Find a comfortable position, close your eyes if you'd like, and let yourself begin to relax. Over the next few hours, we're going to explore a world that no longer exists, a world of jobs and professions that have faded into history, made obsolete by the passage of time and the march of progress. Today, we'll discover 10 occupations from the 20th century, each one essential in its day, each one now vanished. We'll meet the rat catchers who ventured into sewers and cellars, the water carriers who brought life's most basic necessity to households before the age of plumbing, and the railway firemen who tended the beating hearts of steam locomotives. We'll learn about bowling pin sitters who dodged flying pins, elevator operators who guided passengers through vertical cities, and switchboard operators who connected voices across distances with cords and jacks. These are stories of real work, done by real people, sometimes dangerous, often demanding, always necessary for the world they inhabited. 100 facts about 10 forgotten professions, told slowly and gently to help you drift peacefully into sleep. There's no need to remember everything you hear. Let the words wash over you. If your mind wanders, that's perfectly fine. If you fall asleep before we finish, even better. These stories will be here, patient and unchanging, whenever you need them. So settle in, let your breathing slow, and let's begin our journey into the world of obsolete occupations, starting with a figure who once walked every city street, hunting in the shadows for one of humanity's oldest adversaries, the rat catcher. In the shadowy corners of cities and towns throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, there existed a profession that most people preferred not to think about, yet desperately needed. The rat catcher was a familiar figure in the alleyways and basements of urban life, a solitary worker who ventured into places others refused to go. Armed with traps, trained animals, and an intimate knowledge of rodent behavior, these professionals formed the front line of defense against one of humanity's oldest adversaries. Before modern sanitation systems and professional pest control companies, the rat catcher was an essential guardian of public health, working in the darkness so that others might live and work in safety. Let us explore 10 facts about this vanished profession, a trade that required courage, cunning, and a willingness to face dangers that most could scarcely imagine. Fact 1. A rat catcher was a professional pest control worker paid to hunt, trap, and kill rats in towns, farms, and industrial sites, mainly to protect food supplies and public health. These individuals operated as independent contractors or were employed by municipalities, moving from site to site wherever the rat population had grown too large to ignore. Their expertise was sought after in grain warehouses, docklands, markets, and anywhere that food was stored or processed. The rat catcher's knowledge was hard-won through years of experience, passed down through apprenticeships, or learned through trial and error in the field. Fact 2. Rat catchers searched basements, sewers, alleys, barns, and grain stores for droppings, gnaw marks, and burrows, then used traps, terriers, ferrets, or poison to remove infestations. They developed an almost detective-like ability to read the signs of rat activity. A small pile of droppings here, a gnawed sack of grain there, the distinctive marks left on wood or plaster. All of these clues told the experienced rat catcher where the colony was nesting and how extensive the problem had become. With this knowledge, they would deploy their arsenal of methods, choosing the right tool for each unique situation. Fact 3. They were typically paid per rat or per job, sometimes presenting piles of carcasses to local authorities or property owners as proof of work. This payment structure meant that a rat catcher's income depended directly on their success. At the end of a job, they might arrive with sacks full of dead rats, laying them out for counting in marketplaces or town squares. It was grim work, but it provided tangible evidence of their value. Some kept careful tallies, developing reputations for efficiency that allowed them to charge premium rates for their services. Fact 4. The job helped reduce disease transmission by limiting rodents that could spread plague, typhus, and other infections, especially in crowded cities. In an era before antibiotics and modern medicine, the rat catcher played a vital role in preventing epidemics. Rats were known vectors of devastating diseases, and their presence in large numbers posed an existential threat to urban populations. By controlling rat populations, these workers saved countless lives, though they rarely received recognition for their contribution to public health. They worked in obscurity, their successes measured in the diseases that never arrived. Fact 5. Rat catchers themselves were at a high risk of bites, infections, and exposure to filthy environments like sewers and rubbish heaps. The profession was dangerous in ways both obvious and insidious. A cornered rat is a fierce opponent, capable of inflicting serious bites that could easily become infected in the days before proper wound care. Beyond the immediate danger from the rats themselves, these workers waded through sewage, climbed through garbage-filled cellars, and breathed air thick with dust and disease. Many suffered from chronic health problems, their bodies worn down by years of exposure to the worst environments the city had to offer. Fact 6. Municipalities, landlords, farmers, and factory owners hired rat catchers when infestations threatened grain stores, docks, markets, or slaughterhouses. The demand for their services came from every level of society. A wealthy merchant might hire a rat catcher to clear his warehouse, while the city government might retain one to patrol the waterfront. Farmers called upon them when barn infestations threatened the winter's stored grain, and factory owners needed them when rats began contaminating production areas. The rat catcher moved between these different worlds, equally at home in the elegant townhouse and the filthy dock. Fact 7. In some European towns, a single official rat catcher might be retained by the local government and paid a weekly wage plus bonuses based on results. These fortunate few enjoyed a measure of job security that most in their profession could only dream of. As official appointees, they held a recognized position in the community with regular income and the mai, authority that came with a government post. Still, they had to maintain their effectiveness, as their bonuses depended on results, and a town overrun with rats would quickly seek a replacement. Fact 8. Many relied on specially bred terriers and ferrets to flush rats from holes and drive them into nets or the open where they could be killed. These working animals were indispensable partners in the rat catcher's trade. Terriers, with their fierce hunting instinct and small size, could pursue rats into tight spaces and dispatch them with remarkable efficiency. Ferrets, long and flexible, could navigate the narrow burrows and pipes where rats nested, driving them out into wading traps or the jaws of the terriers. A good rat catcher knew that his animals were as valuable as any trap or poison, and he cared for them accordingly. Fact 9. Some rat catchers secretly bred rats to release or sell back for bounties, boosting their income by supplying the problem they were paid to solve. This darker side of the profession reveals the economic pressures these workers faced. With a regular income and payment by the rat, the temptation to ensure a steady supply of work was sometimes too great. A rat catcher might breed rats in secret, releasing them in areas where he hoped to be hired, or selling them to others who would do the same. It was a risky deception, as discovery would mean the end of their reputation and livelihood. Fact 10. Through the 20th century, organized public sanitation, modern building standards, regulated poisons, and professionalized pest control companies absorbed or replaced individual rat catchers, turning the traditional rat catcher into an obsolete job in most industrialized countries. By the late 1900s, progress in urban planning, construction, and chemistry made the old ways unnecessary. Buildings were designed to be rat-proof, sewage systems were enclosed and maintained, and powerful chemical treatments could be applied by licensed professionals. The lone rat catcher with his dog and traps gradually disappeared, replaced by uniformed technicians driving company vans. By the end of the century, the profession had become a memory, preserved only in old photographs and historical accounts. And so the rat catcher passes into history, a reminder of a time when cities were wilder places and when controlling nature's creatures required not technology and corporations, but individual skill, bravery, and an intimate knowledge of the shadows, where rats and humans shared an uneasy coexistence. The water carrier, before the turn of a tap, could summon a clear stream of water, before pipes ran beneath every street and into every home. There existed a profession that sustained the very heartbeat of urban life. The water carrier was a constant presence in the streets of cities around the world, bearing the weight of one of humanity's most essential needs upon their shoulders. Day after day, they walked the same routes, climbed the same staircases, and knocked on the same doors, bringing the element without which no household could function. Their work was humble, often invisible in the grand narratives of history. Yet without them, cities could not have existed in their pre-modern form. Let us turn our attention now to this vanished trade and discover 10 facts about those who carried water through the streets of yesterday. Fact 1. A water carrier was a manual delivery worker who supplied households and businesses with usable water before widespread indoor plumbing and municipal pipe networks. In an age when water did not flow at the turn of a handle, these workers formed the circulatory system of the city, moving water from its sources to the places where people lived and worked. They were as necessary as bakers or blacksmiths, providing a service that touched every aspect of daily life. Without the water carrier, families could not cook their meals, businesses could not operate, and the basic functions of cleanliness and health could not be maintained. Fact 2. Water carriers collected water from sources such as rivers, wells, fountains, or public pumps and transported it in buckets, barrels, or skins to homes, workshops, and markets. Each morning, they would make their way to these gathering points, joining others in the pre-dawn quiet to fill their vessels. The quality of these sources varied greatly. A deep well might provide clean, cold water, while a river could carry the runoff and waste of the city itself. The carriers knew which sources were best, which fountains ran most reliably, and which wells sometimes ran dry in the hot months. This knowledge was the foundation of their trade. Fact 3. They delivered measured quantities, often sold by the bucket or barrel, to regular customers who relied on them for drinking, cooking, and washing water in cities without reliable piped supplies. The relationship between carrier and customer was built on trust and routine. A household might contract for 2 buckets each morning, or a business might require a full barrel 3 times per week. Payment was usually made in small coins, calculated by volume, and many carriers kept careful mental accounts of who owed what. For the customers, the carrier's arrival was a moment to be anticipated, as the water they brought made the day's work possible. Fact 4. In many towns, carriers used shoulder yokes, hand carts, or pack animals to move heavy containers through narrow streets and up staircases. The physical demands of the work were extraordinary. A yoke balanced across the shoulders might support 2 heavy buckets, the wood digging into flesh hour after hour. Hand carts rattled over cobblestones, requiring strength to push and skill. To navigate around corners and through crowded marketplaces, those fortunate enough to afford a donkey or mule could carry more water with less strain, though the animal required care and feeding. The carrier's body was shaped by this labor, muscles developing in patterns unique to the profession. Fact 5. Some cities regulated water carriers with licenses or assigned routes, and carriers might fill up at specific authorized wells or standpipes. Municipal authorities recognized both the importance and the potential for disorder in the water trade. By requiring licenses, they could ensure a baseline of reliability and collect fees. Assigned routes prevented conflicts between carriers and ensured that all neighborhoods received service. The authorized filling points were maintained by the city, sometimes with attendants who monitored quality and prevented overcrowding during peak hours. These regulations transformed an informal trade into a recognized occupation. Fact 6. The job provided low-paid work for the urban poor, recent migrants, or people with limited skills, but it was essential for daily life before modern. Water infrastructure. Anyone strong enough to carry weight and honest enough to be trusted could become a water carrier. For new arrivals to the city, it offered immediate employment without the need for apprenticeship or special training. The pay was modest, barely enough to survive on, but it was regular and reliable. Many carriers worked their whole lives in the trade, while others used it as a stepping stone to something better, saving their earnings until they could afford to learn another skill or open a small shop. Fact 7. In some communities, families developed long-term relationships with a particular water carrier who knew their needs and delivered on a regular schedule. These relationships could span decades, with the same carrier serving a household through births, marriages, and deaths. The carrier might know which family member was ill and needed extra water for bathing, or which household was preparing for a celebration and would need more than usual. In return, loyal customers might offer small bonuses, a warm meal on a cold day, or help when the carrier faced difficulties. It was a human connection woven into the fabric of daily survival. Fact 8. Because carriers often drew from shared public sources, water quality varied, and contamination at the source or in dirty containers could spread disease. The water that sustained life could also carry death. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid could all spread through contaminated water, and the carrier's vessels, if not properly cleaned, could harbor dangerous bacteria. During epidemics, the water carrier sometimes became a figure of suspicion, even as people depended on their service. The connection between water quality and disease was not fully understood until the mid-19th century, and by then, countless lives had been lost to preventable waterborne illnesses. Fact 9. Water carrier work was common in many European, Middle Eastern, Asian, and colonial cities well into the 19th century and survived in some places into the early 20th century. From the fountains of Rome to the wells of Cairo, from the rivers of Delhi to the springs of colonial settlements in the Americas, water carriers were a universal feature of pre-industrial urban life. The specific customs varied the equipment they used, the way they dressed, the calls they made to announce their arrival, but the essential service remained the same. As the 19th century progressed, the profession began its slow decline, lasting longest in places where modernization came late or where geography made piped systems impractical. Fact 10. Even today, in regions without modern infrastructure, similar. Manual water hauling roles persist informally, but the classic urban water carrier occupation is largely considered an obsolete job in industrialized countries. The coming of municipal water systems, with their networks of pipes and treatment facilities, rendered the water carrier unnecessary in the developed world. By the early 20th century, the sight of someone carrying water for sale had become a rarity in European and American cities, a reminder of an earlier time. Yet the profession lives on in memory and in those parts of the world where infrastructure has not yet reached, where people still carry water as they have for thousands of years, continuing a tradition as old as cities themselves. And so we leave. The water carrier, whose steps echo faintly in the streets of history, a reminder that even the most basic necessities we take for granted were once carried on human backs, one bucket at a time, through all the seasons and all the years before. The modern age. The railway firemen on steam locomotives dot in the golden age of steam railways, when iron horses thundered across continents, pulling the commerce and dreams of nations. There existed a partnership at the heart of every locomotive, while the engineer commanded the controls and guided the train along its route. Beside him stood another figure, often younger, always watchful, tending the beating heart of fire and water that gave the machine its life. The railway fireman was more than a coal shoveler, though that was certainly part of the work. He was a custodian of tremendous power, a guardian against catastrophe, and often an apprentice learning the secrets of the iron road. His was a world of heat and smoke, of careful judgment and physical endurance, of steam pressure and water levels that meant the difference between a successful journey and disaster. Let us now explore 10 facts about this vanished role, a profession that rode the rails through the great age of steam. Fact 1. A railway fireman on steam locomotives was the crew member who fed the engine, managing the fire and boiler so the train had enough steam to move and stop safely. Every journey began with the fireman's work, and the success of that journey depended on his skill and attention. The locomotive was a hungry beast, consuming coal and water in vast quantities, transforming them through fire into the steam that drove its pistons. Without the fireman's constant care, the fire would die or burn unevenly, steam pressure would drop, and the train would slow to a crawl or stop entirely. He was the keeper of the flame, the one who ensured that power was always available when the engineer called for it. Fact 2. The fireman's primary job was to shovel coal into the firebox and maintain an even, hot fire to generate the steam needed for the locomotive's power. This was work that looked simple, but demanded considerable skill. The coal had to be distributed evenly across the grate, not piled in the center or left thin at the edges. A skilled fireman could read the color of the flames, the sound of the fire and the behavior of the smoke to know exactly where to place each shovelful. On a long run, he might move several tons of coal, shovel by shovel, maintaining a rhythm that could last for hours. Some locomotives had automatic stokers that fed coal mechanically, but even these required supervision and adjustment, and many lines continued to use hand firing throughout the steam era. Fact 3. Firemen constantly watched the boiler pressure gauge and adjusted firing and draft so steam pressure stayed within a safe, efficient range for the engineer's demands. The pressure gauge was one of the most important instruments in the cab, and the fireman's eyes returned to it again and again throughout the journey. Too little pressure meant insufficient power for the grade ahead. Too much pressure strained the boiler and wasted fuel. The fireman adjusted the dampers and blowers to control the draft through the fire, making it burn hotter or cooler as needed. He had to anticipate the engineer's needs, building pressure before a steep climb, easing off during a coast, always staying ahead of the locomotive's demands. Fact 4. They monitored the water level in the boiler using sight glasses and injectors, making sure the crown sheet at the top of the firebox was always covered to prevent a catastrophic boiler explosion. This was perhaps the fireman's most critical safety responsibility. The crown sheet, the metal plate forming the top of the firebox, was kept cool by the water above it. If the water level dropped too low and exposed the crown sheet to direct heat from the fire below, the metal could soften and fail, resulting in an explosion that could destroy the locomotive and kill everyone nearby. The firemen checked the water glasses constantly, using injectors to add water from the tender as needed. It was a vigilance that could never lapse, not even for a moment. Fact 5. Managing water was a balancing act. Too little was dangerous, but too much reduced steaming efficiency and could make it hard to maintain pressure. Water in the boiler absorbed heat to create steam, but excess water meant more mass to heat and less space for steam to accumulate. A fireman had to judge carefully, keeping the level in the optimal range where safety was assured but efficiency was not compromised. Different types of locomotives and different operating conditions required different approaches. A heavy freight train climbing a long grade demanded different water management than a fast passenger express on level track. Experience taught these subtleties, and a skilled fireman developed an almost intuitive sense for the right balance. Fact 6. The fireman worked under the direction of the engineer, coordinating firing with track conditions, gradients, and speed, so the locomotive had enough steam for hills, signals, and station stops. The relationship between fireman and engineer was a partnership built on communication and trust. The engineer focused on controlling the locomotive and watching the track. Ahead relied on the fireman to provide steady power. He might call out, "We've got a grade coming, build her up," and the fireman would increase his firing rate. Or, "Easy now, we're coasting into the station," and the fireman would let the fire settle. On familiar routes, experienced crews worked, with barely a word, each knowing what the other needed before it was spoken. Fact 7. Before a trip, firemen helped prepare the locomotive, checking water and fuel supplies, cleaning the firebox and ashpan, lighting the fire, and slowly bringing the engine into steam. The work began hours before the scheduled departure. The firemen would arrive at the engine shed in the pre-dawn darkness, climb into the cold cab, and begin the process of waking the sleeping giant. Old ash and clinker had to be removed from the firebox. The grates had to be cleaned, Fresh coal was loaded. The fire was lit with wood kindling and carefully built up. As steam pressure began to rise, the firemen checked every gauge, every valve, every injector, ensuring that everything functioned properly. By the time passengers boarded or freight was loaded, the locomotives stood ready, a living thing of fire and steam. Fact 8. Many future engineers started as cleaners and then firemen, spending years learning the locomotive systems and the craft of firing before being promoted to the driver's seat. This apprenticeship system ensured that those who eventually commanded locomotives understood every aspect of their operation. A young man might spend a year or more as an engine cleaner, washing locomotives and performing basic maintenance while learning from experienced crews. Promotion to fireman meant taking on real responsibility, and the best firemen, after years of service, might eventually be promoted to engineer. It was a career path that rewarded skill, reliability, and dedication, and it produced engineers who understood their machines from the ground up. Fact 9. The job was physically demanding, involving heavy shoveling in heat, smoke, and vibration for long hours, especially on steep or fast mainline runs that required intense firing to keep pressure up. The cab of a steam locomotive in operation was an extreme environment. The firebox radiated tremendous heat, while drafts from the open windows brought cold air. Coal dust filled the air. The locomotive's motion created constant vibration and jolting. The firemen stood or crouched in this environment for the entire journey, wielding a heavy shovel, breathing smoke and steam, his body moving to the rhythm of the work. On a hard run over mountain grades, a fireman might shovel coal almost continuously for an hour or more, his muscles burning, sweat streaming, the physical effort pushed to its limits. Fact 10. With the dieselization and electrification of railways, in the mid-20th century, the classic steam locomotive fireman role largely disappeared because modern engines no longer needed hand-fired boilers. The transition came gradually over the decades following World War II. Diesel locomotives, more efficient and requiring less maintenance, began to replace steam on one line after another. These new machines needed no fireman. A single engineer could operate them alone. Electric locomotives, drawing power from overhead wires or third rails, required no fire at all. The skills that firemen had developed over years became suddenly obsolete. By the 1960s and 1970s, steam had vanished from most major railways in the developed world, and with it went the profession of the railway fireman, surviving only on heritage railways, where volunteers and enthusiasts keep the old skills alive for new generations to witness and admire. And so the fireman's story ends, or rather transforms into memory and preservation, a reminder of the days when trains required not just drivers, but tenders of fire, when the journey depended on human muscle and judgment as much as on engineering, when the romance of the rails was inseparable from the glow of the firebox and the skill of the man who fed it. The bowling pin setter? In the warm glow of bowling alleys during the first half of the 20th century, before the whir and clatter of automatic machinery became the soundtrack of the sport, there existed a ballet of sorts at the far end of each lane. Young figures moved with practiced speed and agility, resetting pins, dodging bowling balls, and keeping the games flowing frame after frame. These were the bowling pensetters, more commonly known as pin boys, though the term belied the skill and courage their work required. They were the invisible hands that made America's favorite pastime possible, working in the shadows behind the pins, while bowlers in the bright lights of the lane celebrated their strikes and spares. Their story is one of youth and danger, of quick reflexes and hard-earned coins, of a job that vanished so completely that younger generations can scarcely imagine it ever existed. Let us now discover 10 facts about these forgotten workers of the bowling alley. Fact 1. Bowling pin sitters, or pin boys, were essential to bowling before automated machines, manually handling every frame behind the pins. Without them, the game could not be played. Each time a bowler released the ball and it crashed into the pins, someone had to clear away what had fallen and rebuild the formation for the next attempt. This happened thousands of times each evening in bowling alleys. Across the country, an endless cycle of destruction and reconstruction. The pin boys made it all possible, their labor so fundamental to the sport that bowlers barely gave them a thought, focused as they were on their scores and techniques. Fact 2. Pin boys cleared fallen pins from the lane after each roll, and then carefully reset all 10 pins into the correct triangular formation for the next frame. Speed and accuracy were both essential. A pin boy had to gather the fallen pins quickly, check that none were damaged, and place them precisely on their marks. The triangular formation had to be exact pins too close together or too far apart would affect the game unfairly. Experienced pin boys could reset a full rack in mere seconds, their hands moving with practiced efficiency, placing each pin with barely a glance. It was repetitive work, but it required concentration and skill that came only with practice. Fact 3. They also returned bowling balls to players, often by rolling or dropping them into a simple return track at the back of the lane. After the ball had completed its journey down the lane and come to rest in the pit, the pin boy would retrieve it and send it back to the bowler. Some alleys had gravity-fed return tracks built into the structure, and the pin boy would simply place the ball into the chute. Others required the pin boy to roll the ball back along a side channel or even carry it to the front of the alley. During breaks in play, this added another layer of timing to the job. The pin boy had to coordinate resetting pins with returning balls, all while staying alert to the next bowler preparing to throw. Fact 4. The job was usually done by teenagers or young men, often from disadvantaged backgrounds, because the pay was low and the work was part-time and evening-heavy. For many young people in the early and mid-20th century, working as a pin boy provided crucial income for their families. The work didn't require special education or training, making it accessible to those who had left school early or couldn't find other employment. The hours suited students who could work after school and on weekends, though the pay was modest typically, a few cents per game, plus tips if the bowlers were generous. It was hard work for small wages, but for some, it was the only work available. Fact 5. Pin boys typically worked multiple lanes at once, sitting on a ledge or small platform above or behind the pins so they could jump down quickly between shots. The economics of the job meant that a pin boy couldn't survive on the earnings from a single lane. Most worked 2 lanes simultaneously, sometimes even 3 if they were particularly quick and the bowlers were slow. They would perch on a narrow bench or ledge between lanes, watching both games, waiting for that moment after the ball was thrown when they could drop down, perform their work, and scramble back to safety before the next ball came thundering down. It was a physically demanding arrangement that required constant alertness and split-second timing. Fact 6. The work was physically demanding and dangerous. Pin boys risked being hit by misthrown balls or flying pins, and sometimes suffered serious bruises or even broken ribs. Not every bowler had good aim, and bowling balls weighing 16 pounds could come careening into the pit from unexpected angles. Pins, when struck at high speed, became projectiles themselves, flying through the air with enough force to injure. Pin boys learned to read the bowlers, identifying those with wild throws or poor control, and took extra precautions when working their lanes. Despite all care, injuries were common. Bruises were considered part of the job. More serious injuries, broken bones, concussions happened often enough that every pin boy knew someone who had been hurt badly. Fact 7. To avoid injury, they learned to jump onto side platforms or perch above the pit the moment a bowler released the ball, then drop back down to reset the pins. This was the essential survival skill of the pin boy. They had to time their movements perfectly, waiting until the absolute last moment to clear the deck, maximizing the time available for their work while minimizing their exposure to danger. The good ones developed an almost sixth sense, able to anticipate when a bowler was about to release, able to launch themselves to safety in an instant. It was an athletic performance repeated hundreds of times per shift, a constant dance between efficiency and self-preservation. Fact 8. Some alleys used simple mechanical aids, such as treadle-operated tables that lifted pins into position, but a person still had to load pins and operate the device by hand. These early attempts at mechanization eased the physical burden somewhat, but didn't eliminate the need for human workers. A pin boy would place pins onto a treadle device, step on the pedal, and the mechanism would lift them into position on the laying. It was faster than placing each pin individually, but still required judgment, dexterity, and constant attention. These hybrid systems represented a transitional stage, acknowledging that the manual labor was a problem, but not yet solving it completely. Fact 9. Complaints about unreliable, slow, or rowdy pin boys helped motivate alley owners to seek a fully mechanical solution. The relationship between alley owners and pin boys was often fraught. The boys were young, sometimes unruly, occasionally unreliable. They might not show up for their shifts, leaving alleys short-staffed during busy evenings. Some were accused of deliberately slowing down to extend the number of frames and increase their earnings. Others engaged in horseplay or shouted back at demanding bowlers. These management headaches, combined with the ongoing cost of paying pin boys, created a strong incentive for a technological solution. The industry wanted consistency and reliability that human workers seemed unable to provide. Fact 10. In the early 1950s, AMFEF's automatic pin sitter installations showed that bowling could run without pin boys, and by the 1960s, widespread adoption of these machines made the traditional pin sitter job virtually obsolete in most modern alleys. The machines arrived like a revolution, sweeping through the bowling industry with remarkable speed. AMFEF's automatic pin sitters and competing models from Brunswick and others could reset pins faster and more accurately than any human, without breaks, without complaints, without injuries. Alley owners invested heavily in the new technology, and within a decade, the pin boy had become a rarity. By the end of the 1960s, the job had essentially disappeared from mainstream bowling, surviving only in a handful of small, old-fashioned alleys that couldn't afford to modernize. An entire occupation, once employing thousands of young people, had been rendered obsolete by engineering dot, and so the pin boys vanished from the alleys, their quick movements and shouted warnings fading into memory, replaced by the efficient clatter of machines. They remain in old photographs and in the memories of those who once sat on those narrow platforms, watching the balls come down, ready to leap to safety and start the cycle again, night after night, in the golden age before automation. The lift boy dot in the vertical cities that rose skyward during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a new kind of worker emerged to guide people through this novel dimension of urban travel. The lift boy, or elevator operator, stood at the controls. Of the mechanical conveyances that carried passengers from floor to floor, mastering a skill that looked simple but required genuine talent and constant attention. These operators were the gatekeepers of vertical movement, the human interface between passenger and machine in an era when elevators were considered too complex and too dangerous for ordinary people to operate themselves. In their uniforms and white gloves, they represented a peculiar intersection of technology and service, mechanics and hospitality. Their domain was a small cage of brass and wood, moving through the shaft like a ship through the air, and for decades they were an indispensable part of the urban landscape. Let us now explore 10 facts about this vanished profession, a job that existed in the brief window between the invention of the elevator and its eventual automation. Fact 1. A lift boy was an early elevator operator who manually controlled lifts before fully automatic systems became common. The elevators of this era were sophisticated machines, but they lacked the automatic controls that modern riders take for granted. Someone had to be present in the car at all times, someone who understood the machinery and could operate it safely. The lift boy filled this role, trained to handle the controls and responsible for every journey the elevator made. Without him, the elevator sat idle, and the building's vertical transportation ground to a halt. He was as necessary to the elevator's operation as a driver was to an automobile, and passengers depended entirely on his skill. Fact 2. Lift boys operated a large control lever to move the elevator car up or down, using judgment and timing to stop level with each floor rather than overshooting or bouncing. The control lever was deceptively simple in appearance. Push it forward to ascend, pull it back to descend, but mastering it took considerable practice. The elevator car had momentum that had to be anticipated and counteracted. Starting too quickly could jolt the passengers. Stopping too abruptly could send them stumbling. The true art lay in bringing the car to rest exactly level with the landing, so that passengers could step out without navigating a gap or step. A skilled operator could perform this feat smoothly every time, making it look effortless, while a novice might overshoot and have to make small corrections, bouncing the car up and down until it was properly aligned. Fact 3. They opened and closed inner car gates and outer shaft doors by hand, ensuring that all doors were properly shut before moving the lift. This was a critical safety responsibility. The shaft doors on each floor had to be closed to prevent anyone from stepping into an empty shaft, while the inner gate of the car itself protected passengers from contact with the shaft walls during travel. The lift boy developed a routine, checking each door and gate, listening for the solid click that meant they were properly latched. It was easy to become complacent with this repetitive task, but a moment's inattention could result in tragedy. The conscientious operator never took shortcuts, never assumed a door was closed without checking, never moved the car until certain that everything was secure. Fact 4. Working a manual lift required a good sense of timing and coordination. Because there were no automatic leveling systems or interlocks to guarantee a safe floor stop, every journey was an exercise in judgment and feel. The operator had to sense the car's speed through vibration and sound, had to judge distance by counting floors and watching the shaft wall slide past, had to time the application of the brake so that deceleration would bring the car to rest at precisely the right moment. Different loads affected the car's behavior. A full elevator heavy with passengers moved differently than an empty one. Experienced operators adjusted instinctively, their hands and minds working together in a practiced coordination that became second nature after thousands of trips. That fact. 5. In many buildings, passengers were not allowed to operate the lift themselves because owners considered it too dangerous to trust untrained users with the brakes and controls. This prohibition was often enforced by design as well as policy. Some elevators had control levers that could only be operated by someone standing at a specific position within the car. Others were kept locked unless operated by someone with a key. Building managers feared that untrained operators would cause accidents, damage the equipment, or create liability. The lift boy, therefore, represented not just convenience, but safety. A trained professional who could be trusted with the machine and held accountable for its proper operation. Fact 6. Lift boys were common in hotels, department stores, offices, and warehouses, especially in multi-story buildings where frequent trips were needed. Each of these settings created different demands. In a busy department store during holiday shopping, the lift boy might make hundreds of trips in a day, the car packed with shoppers and their parcels, stopping at every floor. In an office building, the morning and evening rush hours created intense periods of activity, with passengers anxious to reach their destinations quickly. Hotels required a more measured pace, with guests sometimes carrying luggage and expecting a certain level of service. Warehouse lifts handled freight as well as people, demanding strength and caution. The lift boy adapted to each environment, learning its rhythms and requirements. Fact 7. Many wore uniforms and sometimes white gloves, reinforcing a sense of service and decorum as they greeted passengers and managed the ride. The uniform marked the lift boy as an employee, a figure of authority within his small domain, and created an atmosphere of professionalism and care. In upscale hotels and department stores, the uniforms might be quite elaborate brass buttons polished to a shine, caps worn at a precise angle, white gloves spotless and fresh. The lift boy was often one of the first employees a visitor encountered, and the impression he made reflected on the entire establishment. He learned to stand straight, to greet passengers with courtesy, to maintain his composure even during the busiest times, or when dealing with difficult customers. Fact 8. Beyond driving the lift, they often acted as guides, asking passengers destinations, selecting floors for them, and occasionally announcing floors or departments. In large buildings, especially department stores with multiple departments spread across many floors, the lift boy served as a living directory. He might announce second floor ladies' fashions, millinery, and accessories, or fifth floor furniture, home goods, and carpets. Regular passengers appreciated this service, which saved them from having to remember or search for their destinations. The lift boy became intimately familiar with the building's layout, and could answer questions about where to find specific offices, shops, or services. He was part operator, part guide, part ambassador. Fact 9. As automatic push-button elevators and safety interlocks spread through the mid-20th century, the practical need for a dedicated lift boy disappeared in most buildings. The technology that rendered the profession obsolete arrived gradually, improving with each generation. Early automatic elevators were viewed with suspicion and often performed less smoothly than human-operated ones, but they improved steadily. By the 1950s and 1960s, automatic elevators had become reliable, safe, and economical. Building owners recognized that eliminating the lift boy's salary would save money, and passengers discovered that they could operate elevators themselves without difficulty. The transition happened building by building, and with each conversion, more lift boys found themselves without work, their skills suddenly irrelevant in the face of technological progress. Fact 10. The role survives only in a few historic or niche installations, such as heritage buildings or special freight and construction lifts, making the traditional lift boy a largely obsolete occupation today. In certain grand old hotels, preserved as monuments to an earlier era, manually operated elevators still run, and uniformed operators still stand at their controls, offering guests a taste of the past. Some industrial settings still use manually operated freight elevators, though these are operated by workers whose primary job is something else, not dedicated lift boys. For the most part, however, the profession has vanished completely, remembered only in old movies and photographs, a casualty of automation and progress that transformed the simple act of moving between floors from a service, requiring human skill, into something any person can do with the push of a button. And so the lift boy steps out of his cage for the last time, his uniform hung up, his practiced hand leaving the control lever forever. The elevators continue to rise and fall, but they do so now without him, automated and efficient, lacking perhaps the human touch, but gaining in economy and convenience, carrying forward the same passengers he once transported, floor by floor, through the vertical architecture of the modern city. The switchboard operator. Before voices could travel instantly through invisible networks at the touch of a button, before automated systems could route calls in microseconds, there existed a vast human network that made telephone communication possible. At the heart of this network sat the switchboard operator, presiding over panels of lights, jacks, and tangled cords, physically connecting one person's voice to another's through the manual insertion of plugs into precisely the right sockets. These operators were the living neurons of the telephone system, the essential link between caller and recipient, and for decades they made every long-distance conversation, every business call, every emergency connection possible through their skill and attention. Predominantly women, they sat at their boards in shifts that stretched through day and night, their hands moving with practiced speed among hundreds of connections, their voices the first sound a caller heard when lifting the receiver. Let us now explore 10 facts about this remarkable profession, a job that once employed hundreds of thousands and has now all but disappeared into history. Fact 1. Switchboard operators manually connected calls by inserting phone plugs into jacks on a large telephone switchboard to complete circuits between callers. The switchboard itself was an imposing piece of equipment, a panel studded with rows upon rows of small holes, each representing a telephone line. When someone wanted to make a call, The operator would take a cord with a plug on the end and insert it into the jack corresponding to the caller's line, then insert the other end of the cord into the jack of the person being called. This physical connection completed the electrical circuit that allowed voices to travel between the two telephones. It was a beautifully simple system in concept, but in practice, with hundreds or thousands of lines to manage, it required extraordinary coordination and memory. Fact 2. Each telephone line had a jack with a small light that lit up when the receiver was lifted, signaling the operator to answer and plug the caller into the desired line. The switchboard was alive with these tiny lights, winking on and off throughout the day and night. When a light appeared, the operator would respond immediately, inserting a cord into that jack and throwing a switch to speak with the caller. "Number, please," became the iconic greeting, and the caller would provide the telephone number they wished to reach. The operator would then locate the corresponding jack, insert the other end of the cord, and ring the destination line. When both parties had finished their conversation and hung up, lights would signal the disconnection, and the operator would remove the cords, making those lines available for the next calls. Fact 3. Operators often worked long weeks. In early 20th century systems, full-time operators could be on duty around 56 hours per week. The telephone system operated continuously, and operators worked in shifts to ensure coverage at all hours. A typical week might include 6 9-hour days or some combination of day and evening shifts. The work was unrelenting during busy periods, with lights constantly illuminating and calls piling up. Operators had to remain at their boards, alert and ready, with only brief breaks for meals or rest. The long hours took their toll, and the telephone companies gradually reduced the work week as labor standards improved. But for many years, commitment required was substantial. Fact 4. The job was physically and mentally demanding, requiring quick hand movements among cords, keys, and lights, plus constant concentration to handle many calls at once. An operator's hands were in constant motion, reaching, inserting, removing, and replacing cords dozens or hundreds of times per hour. The mental load was equally significant. Operators had to remember which cords connected which calls, had to monitor multiple conversations in progress, had to keep track of which lines were busy and which were available. During peak hours, the board might be filled with active connections, and new lights would be appearing, even as the operator struggled to keep up with existing calls. It required a particular kind of mental stamina, the ability to maintain focus and accuracy hour after hour, despite the repetitive nature of the work. Fact 5. The first female switchboard operator, Emma Nutt, began work in 1878, and the occupation soon became heavily dominated by women. Before Emma Nutt's pioneering work, telephone companies had employed young men as operators, but they proved problematic, sometimes rude to callers, prone to horseplay, and generally unreliable. Emma Nutt and her sister Stella, hired by the Telephone Dispatch Company in Boston, demonstrated that women could perform the work with greater courtesy and professionalism. Their success led to a wholesale shift in hiring practices. Within a few years, switchboard operating had become women's work, one of the first technical occupations to open to women in significant numbers. It offered respectable employment at a time when women's work options were severely limited. Fact 6. By about 1950, roughly 350,000 women worked as switchboard operators for phone companies, and including private boards, around 1 in every 13 working women in the United States held this job. The scale of this employment was extraordinary. In the post-war era, the switchboard operator was one of the most common occupations for working women in America. In cities and towns across the country, telephone exchanges employed dozens or hundreds of operators. It was work that required only a high school education, but offered steady employment, decent wages by the standards of the time, and a certain social respectability. For many young women, a position as a telephone operator represented economic independence and a step into the working world. Fact 7. At mid-century, the Bell telephone system alone employed about 342,000 operators, illustrating how central the occupation was to telecommunication. This vast workforce represented a significant operating expense for the telephone companies, but it was absolutely necessary. Every call that crossed between exchanges, every long-distance connection, required an operator's intervention. The Bell system maintained large operating centers in major cities. Buildings filled floor after floor with switchboard positions, where operators sat in rows, their hands moving among the cords and jacks in a choreography of connection. These centers operated 24 hours a day, with shifts changing like clockwork, ensuring that the telephone network never slept. Fact 8. Switchboard operators also worked in private branch exchanges, or PBXs, in offices, hotels, hospitals, and factories, routing internal and external calls for a single organization. Beyond the telephone company operators who connected public calls, many businesses and institutions employed their own operators to manage internal communications. A hotel operator would connect guests to rooms, take messages, and handle wake-up calls. A hospital operator would page doctors, route emergency calls, and maintain the communication lifeline that was essential to patient care. An office operator would connect employees to outside lines, transfer calls between departments, and serve as the voice of the company to anyone who called. These private operators often developed deep knowledge of their organizations and became invaluable resources. Fact 9. Because operators controlled the connections, they were in a position to overhear and sometimes listen in on private conversations, which made discretion an important part of the job. The nature of the technology meant that operators could hear everything said on the lines they connected. Most operators respected the privacy of callers and disconnected their own listening circuit once the connection was established, but the temptation and opportunity were always present. Telephone companies emphasized discretion in their training, and professional operators took pride in their trustworthiness. Still, the fact remained that a human being was potentially listening, and this reality shaped how people spoke on the telephone during this era. Conversations were often more guarded, more formal, more aware of the invisible presence on the line. Fact 10. The role offered many women an early path to financial independence and professional identity, helping normalize women's presence in clerical and communication work in the early 20th century. For women in an era when career options were severely limited, switchboard operating represented real opportunity. It was skilled work that commanded respect. It paid better than factory or domestic service, and it offered a professional environment and identity. Operators developed camaraderie, took pride in their speed and accuracy, and sometimes advanced into supervisory positions. The experience of hundreds of thousands of women working as operators helped break down barriers and assumptions about women's capabilities in technical and business roles. When automation eventually eliminated most operator positions, The women who had held these jobs moved into other fields, carrying with them the skills and confidence they had developed at the switchboard. And so, the switchboard operator unplugs her cords for the final time, the lights on her board going dark as automated systems take over the work her hands once performed. The voices she connected continue to flow through the telephone network, but now they find their destinations without human guidance, rooted by electronics and software. Her profession fades into memory, preserved in old photographs of women, seated at their boards, hands poised over the maze of jacks and cords, the essential human element in a system that technology has now made entirely automatic. The factory lector. In the warm, tobacco-scented air of cigar factories during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, an unusual figure commanded attention from a raised platform above the work floor. This was the lector, a reader whose voice carried over the rustle of tobacco leaves and the snip of cutting tools, bringing the outside world into the factory through newspapers and political treatises. The lector was neither manager nor worker in the traditional sense, but something unique, a cultural intermediary, an educator and entertainer. In factories where immigrant workers rolled cigars by hand, day after day, the lector's voice transformed monotonous labor into something more bearable. Through their readings, illiterate workers gained access to literature and ideas that would otherwise have remained beyond their reach. Let us now explore 10 facts about this distinctive profession, a job that existed at the intersection of labor, culture, and politics, and that played a remarkable role in working-class life before vanishing into history. Fact 1. Factory lectors were workplace live audiobooks, most famously in cigar factories, where they educated and entertained workers as they labored. Imagine a large factory floor filled with rows of tables where workers sat rolling cigars with practiced hands, a task that required attention but left the mind free to wander. Into this environment came the lector's voice, reading aloud for hours at a stretch, transforming the workplace into something between a factory and a theater, a school and a public square. The workers' hands never stopped moving, but their minds could travel to distant places, experience great stories, and engage with important ideas, all while maintaining their productivity. It was a remarkable synthesis of labor and learning, made possible by the nature of cigar, rolling skilled work that could be performed almost automatically once mastered. Fact 2. Lectors stood or sat on raised platforms and read aloud newspapers, novels, plays, and political texts to workers. Throughout the workday, the platform, often called a tribune, elevated the lector above the factory floor so that the voice could carry to every corner of the room. From this vantage point, the lector could see the entire workforce and gauge their reactions. The reading might begin with morning newspapers, providing news from Cuba, local events, national politics, and international affairs. As the day progressed, the lector might shift to serialized novels, reading chapter by chapter over days or weeks, keeping workers engaged with ongoing stories. Political pamphlets, works of history, philosophical texts, all found their way into the lector's repertoire, creating an ongoing education that lasted as long as the workday itself. Fact 3. Their reading helped break the monotony of repetitive factory work and kept largely illiterate workforces informed about current events. For workers who could not read or who read only poorly, the lector was a lifeline to the larger world. Many cigar workers were Cuban immigrants with limited formal education. But through the lector, they gained access to the same information and culture that educated people enjoyed. The factory became a kind of informal university, where workers absorbed knowledge and developed political consciousness while earning their living. The psychological impact was profound. Time passed more quickly, work felt less oppressive, and workers felt themselves to be part of a larger community of ideas and events. Fact 4. The Lector tradition developed in 19th century Cuban cigar factories and spread to Cuban-run factories in U.S. cities like Key West and Tampa. The practice had deep roots in Cuban working-class culture, where cigar workers had established the tradition as early as the 1860s. When Cuban workers emigrated to the United States, fleeing political turmoil or seeking better opportunities, they brought the Lector tradition with them. In Key West and Tampa, where large Cuban communities established thriving cigar industries, the Lector became a fixture of factory life. The tradition represented a piece of Cuban culture transplanted to American soil, a way of maintaining identity and community in a new land. Fact 5. Lectors were usually hired and paid by the workers, not the factory owners. Employees often contributed 25 to 50 cents from their weekly wages to fund the position. This arrangement was crucial to the Lector's independence and to the content they could read, because the workers paid the Lector's salary through their collective contributions. The Lector answered to them, not to management. Each worker contributed a small amount, perhaps 25 cents, from a weekly wage that might total only a few dollars, but together, these contributions created a salary sufficient to support the Lector. This democratic funding model meant that the Lector served the workers' interests and could read material that might displease the factory owners, a freedom that would prove both valuable and dangerous. Fact 6. Reading material was chosen democratically, with workers voting on which newspapers, novels, or political tracts they wanted to hear. The Lector did not impose arbitrary choices on the audience, but responded to their preferences and interests. Workers might vote to hear a popular novel or stories of injustice and redemption that resonated with their own experiences. They might choose newspapers that covered labor struggles or political movements they supported. The selection process itself was an exercise in workplace democracy, giving workers agency and voice in at least one aspect of their working lives. Different factories developed different tastes, reflecting the particular political leanings and cultural interests of their workforces. Fact 7. The best Lectors had strong voices and dramatic flair, acting out scenes and characters rather than reading in a flat tone. The position required genuine theatrical talent. A good Lector was part actor, part public speaker, capable of sustaining interest and emotion over hours of reading. When reading a novel, they would adopt different voices for different characters, modulate their tone to match the action, build suspense before dramatic moments. Workers came to know and appreciate Lectors with particular skills. One might be praised for his rendition of Shakespeare, another for the passion he brought to political speeches. The best Lectors became celebrities within the cigar-making community, their reputation spreading from factory to factory. Fact 8. Workers signaled approval by loudly tapping their metal cigar knives, called chaves, on the benches or protested. If they disliked the day's selection or performance, the audience was never passive. When a Lector delivered a particularly moving passage or reached an exciting climax in a story, the factory would erupt in rhythmic tapping, hundreds of metal blades striking wooden benches in unison, creating a thunderous applause. Conversely, if the reading lagged, or if the material displeased the workers, they might voice complaints or demand something different. This immediate feedback created a dynamic relationship between lector and audience, very different from the audience. One-way communication of later media like radio. The lector had to remain responsive and engaging, or face the workers' displeasure. Fact 9. Lectors regularly read about history, labor struggles, socialism, and current politics, helping spread radical and pro-union ideas among factory workers. The content of the readings was often explicitly political, and the lector played a crucial role in workers' political education. They read about labor movements in other countries, about strikes and organizing efforts, about socialist theory, and workers' rights. They read accounts of exploitation and resistance, stories that helped workers understand their own conditions in a broader context. Through these readings, ideas that factory owners would have preferred to suppress circulated freely on the factory floor. Workers developed a political consciousness and a sense of solidarity that would fuel their own organizing efforts and strikes. Fact 10. After waves of strikes and rising tensions in the 1920s and 1930s, many factories eliminated lectors and replaced them with radios or other media, making the traditional factory lector job largely obsolete. The very qualities that made lectors valuable to workers made them threatening to owners. When lectors read revolutionary texts and workers tapped their approval, management saw the stirrings of rebellion. Major strikes in the cigar industry, particularly in the 1920s and 1930s, convinced many owners that the lector system had to go. Some factories banned lectors outright. Others installed radios, offering music and carefully selected programming that lacked the political edge of lector-chosen content. Workers protested these changes, sometimes going on strike to defend the lector tradition, but they were fighting against both technology and management determination. Gradually, the lectors disappeared from American factories, though the tradition persisted longer in Cuba. By mid-century, the factory lector had become a memory, a peculiar and beautiful aspect of working-class culture that had briefly flourished and then faded away. And so the lector descends from the platform for the last time, closing the book, silencing the voice that had filled the factory with stories and ideas. The workers continue their labor, but now in silence or to the sound of radio music, the rich tradition of collective listening and learning, replaced by the experience of modern media. The lector's legacy remains, though, in the memories of those who heard them and in the historical recognition that once, in cigar factories across America, workers enjoyed a form of workplace culture that was democratic, educational, and profoundly human. The phototypesetter. In the mid-20th century, the printing industry underwent a quiet revolution that transformed how text appeared on the printed page. This revolution centered on a new kind of worker, the phototypesetter, who operated sophisticated, optical photographic machines that seemed almost magical compared to the hot metal technology they replaced. These specialists worked in darkened rooms where light was both tool and medium, projecting characters onto film with precise control over every aspect of typography. They bridged the gap between the centuries-old craft of metal typesetting and the digital age that would eventually replace them both. For approximately 4 decades, from the 1950s through the 1980s, phototypesetters were essential figures in publishing, advertising, and graphic design, their work appearing in every newspaper, magazine, and book produced during that era. Let us now explore 10 facts about this technical profession, a job that existed in that fascinating transitional period between mechanical and digital. Technology. Fact 1. Phototypesetters were highly specialized pre-press workers who used optical photographic machines to compose pages on film instead of casting lines of hot metal. The shift from metal to light represented a fundamental reimagining of how text could be set for printing. For centuries, printing had relied on physical metal type individual letters cast in lead alloy, assembled into lines and pages, inked, and pressed onto paper. Phototypesetting abandoned this entire physical process in favor of an optical one. Characters existed not as metal shapes, but as transparent images on film, projected by light onto photosensitive material. The phototypesetter was the technician who commanded this new technology, translating the compositor's traditional skills into the language of optics and chemistry. Fact 2. A phototypesetter operated machines that projected light through tiny film negatives of characters, called photomatrices, onto light-sensitive paper or film, building lines and columns of text for printing plates. The machines themselves were marvels of precision engineering. Inside the machine, a photomatrix, a disc, drum, or grid containing tiny negative images of every character in the font would rotate or shift into position. When the correct character was aligned, a flash of light would shine through it, projecting the character's image through a lens system onto a strip of photographic paper or film advancing below. Character by character, line by line, the machine would build up entire pages of text, all recorded as latent images on the light-sensitive material, waiting to be developed in a darkroom to become visible. Fact 3. They entered text via keyboard or paper tape, then adjusted font, size, line length, and spacing so the exposed film could be pasted up into camera-ready page layouts. The phototypesetter's workstation combined elements of a typewriter, a control panel, and a technical interface. Some systems used a keyboard where the operator typed the text, with codes embedded for formatting instructions. Italics here. A. Larger size there. Adjust the spacing between these letters. Other systems read paper tape, punched with holes representing both characters and commands, prepared separately by keyboarders. The operator would set parameters for each job: which font, what point size, how wide the column, how to justify the text, and the machine would execute these instructions, producing strips of film that contained perfectly composed text ready for the page layout artist to assemble. Fact 4. Early optical mechanical systems like Photosetter, Photon, and Lumatype used rotating discs or drums of characters, each glyph, flashed and imaged one at a time onto film. These first-generation machines were ingenious mechanical solutions to the problem of character selection and projection. A rotating disc might contain an entire font arranged in concentric circles. The disc would spin at high speed, and at the precise moment when the desired character passed in front of the light source, a flash would fire, capturing that character's image. The timing had to be exact, controlled by mechanical or electromechanical systems that coordinated rotation, flash, and film advance. Despite their complexity, these machines could set type far faster than traditional methods, and they opened up new possibilities for typography that had been impractical with metal type. Fact 5. Later, cold type systems integrated electronics and microprocessors to interpret coded markup for italics, justification, hyphenation, and other features and automatically drive the machine's exposure sequence. As electronic technology advanced through the 1960s and 1970s, phototypesetting machines became increasingly sophisticated. Microprocessors allowed the machines to make complex typographic decisions automatically, where to hyphenate words at, line breaks, how to adjust spacing to justify lines evenly, how to kern certain letter combinations for better appearance. The operator could focus on higher-level decisions, while the machine handled the tedious calculations and adjustments. These later systems represented a stepping stone toward fully digital composition, incorporating computer intelligence into what was still fundamentally an optical photographic process. Fact 6. Phototypesetting eliminated cast metal type, which made it far faster and cheaper to set complex pages and freed printers from maintaining huge fonts of lead slugs. The advantages over hot metal were numerous and compelling. Metal type was heavy, required significant storage space, wore out with use, and was limited in size. Very large or very small type required special casting. Phototypesetting, by contrast, could scale a single photo matrix to any size needed, from tiny footnotes to massive headlines. Changing fonts was as simple as changing a disc or drum. Complex mathematical formulas, multiple languages, elaborate typographic effects, all became easier and more economical. Print shops could reduce their capital investment in metal type and the floor space needed to store it, while gaining flexibility and speed. Fact 7. Practical phototypesetting emerged in the late 1940s and 1950s, with systems such as Lumotype becoming widespread in newspapers, book houses, and advertising agencies by the 1960s and 1970s. The technology matured rapidly once the fundamental principles were proven. Newspapers, always operating under tight deadlines, were among the earliest and most enthusiastic adopters. The ability to set type quickly and make last-minute changes without recasting metal lines was revolutionary for daily journalism. Book. Publishers appreciated the quality and flexibility phototypesetting offered. Advertising agencies, always pushing the boundaries of graphic design, embraced the creative freedom the technology provided. By the 1970s, phototypesetting had become the industry standard, and younger workers entering the field never learned hot metal composition at all. Fact 8. Phototypesetters often worked in dedicated composition houses or pre-press departments, supplying film galleys to printers, newspapers, and design studios on tight daily deadlines. The work environment was specialized and often pressured. Composition houses might operate around the clock, with shifts covering morning newspapers, afternoon deadlines, and overnight rush jobs. The phototypesetter's station was typically in a room with controlled lighting, not completely dark, but dim enough that the light-sensitive materials wouldn't be accidentally exposed. The atmosphere combined elements of a technical laboratory and a production facility, with the constant hum of machines, the chemical smell of developing solutions from the adjacent darkroom, and the urgency that came from knowing that publications were waiting for the work you were producing. Fact 9. The job required understanding both typography and darkroom processes. Since exposed film had to be developed, inspected, and sometimes retouched before being used to make plates, a phototypesetter needed to be part technician, part craftsperson. They had to understand the principles of good typography proper: spacing, appropriate font choices, readable line lengths that had been developed over centuries of printing. But they also needed darkroom skills, knowing how to develop the exposed film properly how to judge if the exposure and development were correct, how to spot and correct errors. Sometimes a character would expose poorly and need to be patched with a better copy. Sometimes scratches or dust marks on the film required careful retouching. The phototypesetter was responsible for delivering clean, professional film that would produce excellent printed results. Fact 10. As desktop publishing and computer-to-plate systems spread in the late 1980s and 1990s, the specialist occupation of phototypesetter rapidly disappeared, leaving only a few technicians who maintain legacy machines for museums or niche projects. The end came with surprising speed. Personal computers running page layout software like PageMaker and Quark Express suddenly allowed designers to compose entire pages on screen, seeing exactly what the final result would look like. Digital image setters could output these pages directly to film or even directly to printing plates, eliminating the phototypesetting step entirely. The sophisticated, expensive phototypesetting machines became obsolete almost overnight. The workers who operated them found their specialized skills suddenly irrelevant. Some retrained for the digital workflow, learning to operate image setters or work with desktop publishing software. Others left the industry entirely. By the mid-1990s, the phototypesetter had joined the ranks of obsolete occupations. A brief but important chapter in the long history of printing technology. And so the phototypesetter switches off the machine for the final time, the rotating discs fall silent, and the darkroom lights go dark permanently. A transition from metal to light, which seemed so revolutionary when it arrived, proved to be merely an intermediate step on the journey to the digital present. Yet for those decades when phototypesetting reigned, these specialists played a crucial role, their technical expertise and typographic judgment shaping how printed material looked and read, creating the visual landscape of mid-century publishing that we still recognize in old magazines and books today. The typewriter repair technician. For most of the 20th century, the typewriter was as essential to office work as the computer is today, and like any complex machine in constant use, it required regular maintenance and occasional repair. Enter the typewriter repair technician, a specialized mechanic who understood the intricate clockwork of these writing machines, who could diagnose a problem by sound or feel, and who possessed the patience and precision to adjust mechanisms measured in thousandths of an inch. These technicians were part engineer, part craftsperson, working with tools both standard and improvised to keep the words flowing in offices, newsrooms, universities, and homes across the world. Their workshops were filled with the distinctive smell of oil and metal, the clatter of test typing, and shelves stacked with machines in various states of disassembly. They knew their craft intimately, often specializing in particular brands or models, and took pride in returning a malfunctioning machine to perfect working order. Let us now explore 10 facts about this vanished profession, a trade that served the age of mechanical writing before the digital revolution rendered it nearly extinct. Fact 1. Typewriter repair technicians were skilled mechanics who kept office and honed typewriters running smoothly for most of the 20th century, working on everything from heavy manual machines to electrics. The typewriter, despite its relatively simple appearance, was a marvel of mechanical engineering, containing hundreds or even thousands of precisely coordinated parts. Every key press initiated a cascade of mechanical actions, levers pivoting, springs tensing and releasing, the carriage advancing, type striking paper through an inked ribbon. When any part of this intricate mechanism fell out of adjustment or broke, the technician was called. They were the guardians of written communication in an era when typing was the standard way to produce professional documents, letters, manuscripts, and reports. Fact 2. Technicians cleaned, lubricated, and adjusted the thousands of moving parts. In a typewriter, including type bars, carriage, platen, escapement, and key linkages to ensure crisp, even printing and smooth typing action. Regular maintenance was essential to a typewriter's performance. Over time, dust and debris would accumulate in the mechanism. Oil would dry out or accumulate dirt, becoming sticky rather than lubricating. The technician would carefully disassemble sections of the machine, clean each component, apply fresh oil sparingly to the right points, and reassemble everything with careful attention to alignment. They would adjust the tension of springs, the clearance between moving parts, the precise moment when the escapement released the carriage, all to restore the smooth, responsive feel that made typing a pleasure rather than a struggle. Fact 3. They diagnosed problems like sticky keys, uneven printing, misaligned type, skipping carriages, and jammed ribbons, then repaired or replaced springs, levers, bearings, and other precision parts as needed. Diagnosis was as much art as science. An experienced technician could often identify a problem simply by listening to the machine's sound or feeling its action. A sticky key might indicate a broken spring, accumulated dirt, or a bent lever. Uneven printing could mean the platen was worn, the type bars were misaligned, or the ribbon advance wasn't functioning properly. The technician would test, observe, and deduce, then execute the appropriate repair, bending a lever back into shape, replacing a worn spring, realigning type bars so they all struck the same spot on the platen, adjusting the mechanism that advanced. The ribbon. Fact 4. Repair work relied on specialized small tools such as pullers, alignment gauges, screwdrivers, spring hooks, and custom jigs, many of which experienced technicians modified or made themselves. The typewriter technician's toolkit was highly specialized, accumulated over years of practice. Some tools could be purchased: tiny screwdrivers for the smallest screws, alignment gauges to check type position, spring hooks to manipulate the numerous springs in the mechanism. But many technicians crafted their own tools for specific tasks, modifying existing tools or fabricating entirely new ones to solve particular problems. A bent piece of wire might become the perfect tool for reaching an otherwise inaccessible spring. A custom ground screwdriver tip might be the only thing that could turn a worn screw without stripping it. This custom toolkit was as personal as a fingerprint, reflecting each technician's particular approach and specialties. Fact 5. Major services often involved stripping a machine down, solvent cleaning accumulated ink and dust, reassembling, then performing fine adjustments until every key struck in proper registration. A complete overhaul was extensive work that might take many hours. The technician would remove the outer casing, then systematically disassemble the mechanism, keeping track of hundreds of parts and their relationships. Each component would be cleaned, often in solvent baths that dissolved decades of accumulated grime and dried oil. Worn parts would be identified and set aside for replacement. Then came the painstaking work of reassembly, ensuring every part returned to its proper place, every adjustment screw set correctly, every spring tensioned properly. The final step was testing and fine-tuning, typing test phrases repeatedly, and making minute adjustments until the machine performed flawlessly. Fact 6. Many typewriter technicians trained through apprenticeships in office machine shops, gradually learning to disassemble and reassemble common brands like Underwood, Remington, Royal, and IBM from memory. There were no formal schools for typewriter repair. Knowledge passed from master to apprentice in working shops. A young apprentice might spend months just cleaning machines and replacing ribbons before being allowed to attempt more complex repairs. Over time, under the guidance of experienced technicians, they would learn the particular quirks of different manufacturers. How? An Underwood's mechanism differed from a Royal's, where IBM's design innovations created unique repair challenges. Eventually, they could work on a familiar model almost blindfolded, their hands knowing where every screw and lever belonged. Fact 7. Some specialists focused on electric and later electronic typewriters, including IBM models, which added motors, clutches, and complex linkages that required electrical as well as mechanical skills. Electric typewriters, introduced in the mid-20th century, represented a new level of complexity. Instead of finger pressure directly moving the type bar, electric machines used motor power channeled through clutches and cams. IBM's Selectric, with its revolutionary type ball design replacing individual type bars, required entirely new expertise. Technicians who specialized in electric machines needed to understand electrical circuits, motor operation, and electronic control systems in addition to mechanical principles. These specialists commanded premium rates for their advanced skills, and their expertise became increasingly valuable as offices shifted from manual to electric typewriters. Fact 8. Large organizations such as hospitals, universities, and government offices often had service contracts, with a technician responsible for maintaining hundreds of machines across multiple buildings. For institutions with large typewriter fleets, having a dedicated technician or service contract was essential. A university might have typewriters in every department office, every administrative building, every professor's office. A hospital needed functioning typewriters for medical records, admissions, billing, and correspondence. The contract technician would make regular rounds, performing preventive maintenance, responding to service calls, and keeping detailed records of each machine's condition and repair history. They became familiar faces in these institutions, known to secretaries and administrators, trusted to keep the organization's communication infrastructure running smoothly. Fact 9. Some technicians became experts at modifying keyboards and type slugs to support foreign alphabets or special characters, re-engraving or soldering new type onto existing machines. Customization work represented the highest level of the craft. A scientist might need mathematical symbols not found on standard keyboards. A translator might require Cyrillic or Greek characters. The specialist technician could modify a typewriter. To meet these needs, carefully removing type slugs from type bars, engraving or casting new characters, and soldering them into place with perfect alignment. They might rearrange keyboard layouts, add special keys, or create entirely custom machines for particular applications. This work required not just mechanical skill, but also understanding of typography, metallurgy, and the specific needs of different users. Fact 10. As computers and word processors spread in the 1980s and 1990s, demand for routine typewriter service collapsed, and most dedicated typewriter repair shops closed. The transition was remarkably swift. In 1980, typewriters were still ubiquitous in offices and homes. By 1990, personal computers had largely replaced them for most applications. Word processing software offered capabilities that mechanical typewriters could never match: easy editing, multiple fonts, spell checking, and the ability to save and print multiple copies. As organizations replaced their typewriters with computers, the need for typewriter repair evaporated. Shops that had operated for decades suddenly found themselves with dwindling business. Many technicians retired or retrained for other work. The specialized knowledge they had accumulated over lifetimes of practice became suddenly obsolete, valuable only to a shrinking population of holdouts and enthusiasts who preferred typewriters for their tactile satisfaction and mechanical reliability. And so the typewriter repair technician closes the shop for the last time. The workbench cleared of machines, the specialized tools packed away or sold to collectors. The clatter of typing, once the soundtrack of every office, fades from the workplace, replaced by the quiet clicking of computer keyboards. The craft of typewriter repair survives now only in small niches enthusiasts who appreciate vintage machines, writers who prefer the focused simplicity of typewriters, collectors who preserve mechanical marvels from an earlier era. But as a mainstream profession, as a trade that once employed thousands, the typewriter repair technician has become a memory, a reminder of a time when writing machines were mechanical wonders that required human expertise to maintain and repair. The aircraft listener. In the years between the two world wars, when the threat of aerial attack first became a terrifying reality for civilian populations, military planners faced a vexing problem: how to detect approaching enemy aircraft in time to mount a defense. The solution they developed seems almost medieval in retrospect: giant concrete structures and metal horns designed to amplify sound, manned by personnel with trained ears who listened for the distant drone of aircraft. Engines. These were the aircraft listeners. Defenders armed not with weapons, but with sensitive hearing and patient attention, standing watch along coastlines and borders, their ears turned toward the sky. They worked with technology that married cutting edge acoustic science with methods that wouldn't have seemed out of place centuries earlier. For a brief period in military history, before radar made their profession instantly obsolete, these listeners formed the first line of air defense. There, vigilance potentially meaning the difference between surprise attack and timely warning. Let us now explore 10 facts about this peculiar and short-lived occupation, a profession born of necessity and rendered obsolete by technological advancement within a single generation. Fact 1. Aircraft. Listeners were early air defense personnel who tried to hear enemy planes before they were visible, using huge concrete mirrors or metal horns as amplifiers. The fundamental challenge was simple. Aircraft could attack from any direction, often flying above clouds where they couldn't be seen, and they moved far faster than any previous military threat. Visual observation alone was insufficient. Sound, however, traveled considerable distances, and the distinctive drone of aircraft engines could potentially be detected long before the planes themselves came into view. The aircraft listener's job was to extend human hearing through technology, using massive acoustic amplifiers to capture faint engine sounds from aircraft still miles away, then interpret those sounds to determine direction, distance, and threat. Fact 2. Aircraft listeners positioned sensitive microphones or headsets at the focus of acoustic mirrors or horns, then adjusted them to maximize engine noise and determine the bearing of incoming aircraft. The listening post was a study in concentration and subtle adjustment. The listener would don headphones connected to microphones positioned at the precise focal point of the acoustic reflector, where sound waves converged with maximum intensity. They would slowly rotate the mirror or horn assembly, sweeping across the sky, listening for the telltale throb of aircraft engines amid the background noise of wind, waves, birds, and distant human activity. When they detected a sound, they would make fine adjustments to maximize its volume, rotating the apparatus degree by degree until the sound peaked, indicating that the reflector was pointed directly at the source. The bearing could then be noted and reported. Fact 3. Pairs of listening posts compared bearings from different locations to triangulate an aircraft's approximate position, height, and direction of travel. A single bearing provided limited information. It indicated direction, but not distance or altitude. The solution was to use multiple listening posts separated by several miles. If one post detected an aircraft bearing northwest and another 5 miles away detected the same aircraft bearing northeast, simple geometry could determine where those bearing lines intersected the aircraft's location. By taking repeated bearings as the aircraft moved, listeners could track its course and speed. Height estimation was more difficult, but could be approximated based on sound, intensity, and the angle of the acoustic reflector. This triangulation system required careful coordination and communication between posts, with bearings and timings. Reported to a central plotting room where operators maintained a tactical picture of the airspace. Fact 4. Early systems used giant metal ear trumpet arrays and later large parabolic concrete sound mirrors up to about 200 feet long, or 20 to 30 feet in diameter. The acoustic reflectors were impressive structures, among the stranger military installations ever built. The earliest versions used arrays of large metal horns, like enormous ear trumpets, clustered together and aimed skyward. Later designs favored concrete sound mirrors, massive parabolic or spherical dishes built into the landscape. Some were simple curved walls. Others were complex sculptural forms with multiple reflecting surfaces. The largest, built along the British coast in the 1920s and early 1930s, were truly monumental concrete structures 200 feet long, or circular dishes 30 feet across, permanent installations that dominated their coastal settings. These giants represented significant investments in what was, even at the time, recognized as an imperfect technology. Fact 5. Listeners often wore stethoscope-like headsets or monitored hot wire microphones placed at the mirror's focal point to pick up faint engine sounds. The microphone technology was critical to the system's effectiveness. Early microphones were relatively insensitive, and considerable experimentation went into developing devices that could reliably capture the low-frequency sounds of aircraft engines while filtering out unwanted noise. Some systems used hot wire microphones, which detected sound through the cooling effect of air vibrations on an electrically heated wire. The headsets themselves had to be comfortable enough for extended wear during long watches, sensitive enough to convey subtle differences in sound, and reliable enough to function in all weather conditions. The listener's ears, trained to distinguish aircraft sounds from other sources, were the final and most important element in the detection chain. Fact 6. Under good conditions, sound mirrors could detect slow-moving aircraft roughly 8 to 24 miles away giving around 10 to 15 minutes of warning before they reached the coast. This performance represented the system's greatest achievement and also its fundamental limitation. 10 to 15 minutes was enough time to sound air raid warnings, scramble defending fighters if conditions were favorable, and allow civilians to take cover. It was significantly better than no warning at all, but it was also barely adequate, leaving little margin for error or delay. The range depended heavily on conditions sound carried better on still days with uniform temperature. Worse when wind was blowing or temperature inversions disrupted sound propagation. A listener might detect an aircraft at 20 miles under ideal conditions, but miss one at 10 miles in poor weather. This variability made the system unreliable as a primary defense. Fact 7. Effectiveness dropped sharply with faster aircraft, bad weather, or background noise, and listeners could struggle to distinguish planes from ships or other sources. The system's weaknesses became more apparent as aircraft technology advanced. The acoustic mirrors had been designed for the relatively slow aircraft of World War I and the immediate post-war period, planes that cruised at perhaps 100 miles per hour. As aircraft speeds increased through the 1930s, approaching and exceeding 200 miles per hour, the warning time shrank proportionally. Weather posed constant challenges. Rain created noise that masked aircraft sounds. Wind degraded both sound propagation and directional accuracy, and fog eliminated any possibility of visual confirmation. Background noise from coastal traffic, industry, or even rough seas could overwhelm faint aircraft sounds. False alarms were common, with listeners reporting aircraft that turned out to be ships, vehicles, or even flocks of birds. Fact 8. Acoustic aircraft detection systems were developed during World War I and used experimentally between the wars, mainly on the coasts of Britain and a few other countries. The technology emerged from the desperate circumstances of the First World War, when German airships and aircraft began bombing British cities with impunity. After the war, Britain and a few other nations continued developing acoustic detection, building larger and more sophisticated installations. Britain's network included posts along the south coast facing France and the east coast facing Germany, forming a discontinuous early warning line. Other countries, including France and the United States, experimented with similar systems, but generally concluded that the limitations outweighed the benefits. By the early 1930s, it was clear that acoustic detection was a stopgap measure at best, useful only until something better could be developed. Fact 9. As aircraft speeds increased in the 1930s, planes could be seen almost as soon as they were heard, undermining the usefulness of human aircraft listeners. The death knell for acoustic detection came from the very technology it was designed to counter. Modern all-metal monoplane fighters and bombers of the mid-1930s flew faster, higher, and more quietly than their predecessors. The warning time acoustic mirrors could provide shrank to mere minutes or even seconds. In some cases, visual observers could spot high-altitude aircraft before listeners detected them acoustically, completely inverting the intended relationship. Military planners recognized that acoustic detection had reached the limits of its usefulness and began desperately seeking alternatives. The aircraft listeners, some of whom had manned their posts for years, found themselves presiding over an obsolescent technology even before radar arrived to completely replace it. Fact 10. The introduction of radio wave radar in the mid to late 1930s made acoustic listening posts obsolete But their organizational methods for plotting aircraft positions directly influenced early radar command systems. Radar was the revolution that acoustic detection had never been. Where sound mirrors could detect aircraft at perhaps 20 miles under ideal conditions, early radar sets detected them at 100 miles or more, in any weather, day or night. Radar provided not just bearing, but precise range and altitude information, updated continuously. The acoustic listening posts were rapidly abandoned, their massive concrete mirrors left to weather and decay, strange monuments to technological dead ends. Yet the organizational systems developed for acoustic detection, the network of reporting stations, the central plotting rooms, the procedures for tracking and identifying aircraft transferred directly to the radar era. The listeners themselves often transitioned to become radar operators, their patience and attention to detail serving them well in the new technology. Their profession had been brief, but its legacy endured in the air defense systems that protected Britain through World War II and beyond that. And so the aircraft listener removes the headphones for the final time, the great concrete mirrors falling, silent, no longer sweeping the sky for sounds of approaching danger. The strange sculptures remain, scattered along coastlines, curiosities for hikers and historians, their purpose obscure to modern eyes. They stand as monuments to a moment when humanity's technological reach briefly exceeded its grasp, when the best answer to aerial threat was to listen very carefully with ears extended by concrete and science. Before radar made such listening unnecessary and consigned the aircraft listener to the ranks of obsolete professions, remembered now as a footnote in the history of air defense.